The story of the man who left his world behind. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Today's talk is a very profound one. It is one where our ears are open to new sounds in the sense that we will be exploring ourselves with an awareness to what is novel. The story of the man who left his world behind is actually the story of how Mr.Within was found. And so you see that in your life there are moments where you are shaped and you know yourself to be a name who has lived. You have a body and you have grown, and so you have been formed, and so the story of yourself is very present to you. It is very real for you. But who is the storyteller and where is the character really? When examining how reality finds different ways to present itself, you are your own immediate obligation to move towards the unknown. You see, there are various formats in how a human being can remember himself, and as he remembers, he becomes aware of different forms of his own presence through different senses of space and time. So the fact that you can follow your own experience to an absolute experience is a wonderful idea, but then also a wonderful reality if actualized. So what that means is that you must observe your life and see what is meaningful for you. You are not interested in beliefs of others and also disbeliefs of others. You're interested in what is real for you, because that is what you have to work with. You're not here to accept other people's promises when you are a moving entity. And so when you are a known element within this vastness which you feel is unknown to you, you are the exploration of your greater ability. The fact that you explore and go through certain experiences gives you the ability. That's why you go through a rough experience. You feel you're more able, you're more skilled, even though it was tough, even though it was suffering, you know. But it's an awareness of the fact that experience has just expanded, and so the dimensions of the mind have also opened. Hopefully I'm saying this correctly, but I think it was Jonathan Wendell Holmes, a certain Wendell Holmes fellow, I think. He had this quote, and he's like, once your mind goes through this new experience, you know, it's like it cannot go back to its same dimensions. In other words, that's what I found his quote to suggest in a way. And what that really means is that the experience that you go through, it will open you. You think you are unlucky. You think you are disadvantaged. You think you're incapable. But these are all just parts of the spectrum of all the ability you can be if your awareness is aware to all. And so you find yourself being a story, you know. And so Mr.Within is standing now comfortably. But before, he was simply a human being who was born, and of course, guys, I'm communicating all this very playfully. He was born with a name, and so his name was significant to him because that's how he recognized, that's how he communicated with others. But once your name becomes irrelevant because you wonder, what is the nameless? What is beyond that which I see? Your questions will create a sense of longing in you that you feel you're not satisfied with your reality. You're just like, it's as if you're looking at your life and you're like, okay, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is where I need to be, and that's fine, okay? Now, once you become aware of that, then you recognize that where you are, in other words, look at how your circumstance is shaped. Look at how you find the bars of this prison. Because sometimes when you look at the prison bars, you realize they aren't prison bars. You're just looking at a picture in like some magazine or something, you know? It's important to Dissolve yourself and let yourself flow with life. See that the drops trust the reality of the stream, as if there's a direction to follow. Consciousness is choosing an individuality because that's what it knows. That's simply how the processes of mind have shown itself and in a sense presented itself. Our sense of cognition makes us think that we are beyond ourselves also, but if we are going with the framework that it's a limitation that's trying to find the limitless, because the limitation is real for us, it's as if we don't want to be in the limitless because we can't conceive it. We need to get comfortable with an awareness to all forms of conception, also all observance to conception. You might find yourself suddenly to be in the eyes of that bird between the branches, and so the significance of your life is simply just where you go next and what you eat, what you, in a sense, fulfill yourself with. You know, fulfillment is a key concept in the sense that it suggests that our mistakes show us we can be more than a sense of lack, you know. Once you see that life is here, a sense of excitement comes in front of you because you don't know if that which is here in front of you is really here. It's as if that moment where they tell that person there's a God, a part of them is like, there is a God. Oh, you know, it's as if you found a new relative. But once you really absorb the concept of a God, you're realizing the significance is not in the image, but in the relationship that will be created in a greater experience based on your action. You see, we are multidimensional beings, and human beings throughout history have had different awarenesses to it, you know. Some crazy artists have become, you know, gateways to many realities, you know, and at the same time we've had people who've, you know, also burned books, you need to simply see the flow of information here is natural. It's a natural phenomenon. That's why you don't need to really try to control everything, but simply see the intelligence that is flowing. Because once you do, ideology does not become significant because your trust is no longer in the idea, but the awareness of sound, the awareness of form. It's as if I go to a room, I'm not just interpreting it as if, look, that's Bob and that's, Sally. It's not, it's not that kind of thing. It's just like as you go in the room, you are receiving everything in a moment of nothing. And so as you're experiencing this, you're seeing that the reason you're not just thinking about something is giving the ability to be observant of all of it, And I really want to say this in a profound manner because you see, it's your experience, guys. It's as if like you've never thought about your experience because you thought this was it. What if it's not this? What if this is not just it? What if there's an after party? I don't know. So it's very important for you to be aware that this is your life. And so your life is valuable in how much you know yourself, right? And so don't really cover yourself with too much imagery that when another human being comes up to you and says to you, hey man, look at existence, look at life before you look at the TV screen, It's very important for you to realize the significance of my communication is never you. It's just the fact that you become aware of that which you know yourself to be your limitation and just letting go of it because you're discovering the limitless ability you have as a creator within this experience of creation. It's very important because I like the concept of fractals. When you look at fractals, it's as if many dimensions share the same design. And so what that means is as if like from us being present here and existing here, we are a moment that is also present in many other forms of conception, And so it's like you know, how the prism took one beam and put forth a spectrum, you know. I think a pot of gold, that in certain Irish traditions, it's suggested that it's at the end of the rainbow, which I think is a very deep, it's actually a deep philosophical thing, you know. It's not like you actually go and find a leprechaun, you know. It's like realizing where is light coming from. So when you observe the end of the rainbow, you're not trying to find where the end of the rainbow is, you're trying to see conceptually what does this expression mean, you know. And so this might be an intense interpretation of a very simple thing, but at the same time, it is crucial to let yourself observe yourself through infinity, an infinite ability to take new brushstrokes. The whole point of this talk, the story of the man who left his world behind, is simply that your world sometimes is your association with your environment and how much you've done that in a certain habitual manner. So what that means is that, let's say, you know, if I stopped deciding to do these talks and I suddenly go to, like, you know, a monastery, for example, and if I suddenly am constantly in that monastery, it's totally fine, you know, but I'd see that I eventually take the habits of that, you know. Suddenly I'd suddenly sit down more than I normally do, you know, for example. So that means that your environment is part of your thinking because it is a communication of what you are. So what that means is because you're seeing everything around you, that's how you know you're individual. Because if you were connected on a very direct experiential level, it's like you'd know that you were connected, so you wouldn't be individual. So you got to see that the mystic was simply this human being that realized he can move beyond human conception, and as he does, he was never human conception, but a greater ability. So this sense of greater ability right now is in a story, because right now we're using the technology of sound to imply meaning through words. But it's very important to see that these words are all covering different worlds of our own self-exploration, because we're existential self-communication that is very beautifully an insane man, you know, that is running around. And as this insane man is running around, it's as if he is realizing that it's as if the fact that your awareness reaches a multidimensional point, you are not insane when you're doing something that no one's ever done. In other words, there's a fine line between insanity and genius. And sometimes it's that the insane person, it's based on his ability to communicate, you know. Some insane person might be seeing something, you know, very intense and, it's some crazy thing for him, you know, regardless of how our society acknowledges it. But, you know, if he's able to communicate and be aware of his present moment as his immediate platform, there would be no insanity. There would just be an ability to confront existence. That's it. It's like your moment of intelligence, what is keeping you here is the intelligence, so you are intelligent. And this is all, of course, an existential awareness. It is that moment where you are perhaps looking out of it's late at night and you're looking out of a window, you know, and there's no light in your room and you're just looking through in the pitch blackness, you know, and perhaps you're wandering on thoughts that are beyond the haze. But it's very important to recognize that your sense of unknown gives the space for your experience of novelty. If you suddenly become a person who thinks you know it, you're so convinced that your story is the only story, you would realize that after some point of, you know, really being convinced about your own story, you'd wonder what you are. You'd simply just, as a moment of existence, be curious to transform into a different awareness based on the cyclical change that gives us an infinite experience. Similar to if I could connect mirrors in how, if I could, in a sense, suddenly throw two mirrors in the sky, and these two mirrors faced one another, and in that faced moment, it's as if they were capturing the sky but creating infinite skies, you know, as if that two mirrors in front of one another effect, you know. So it's very crazy that we give ourselves permission to work with an existential allowance that lets us to express ourselves in our chaotic aspects and express ourselves in our ordered aspects, and to be the awareness of both. That is truly the teachings of, I find, of a Zenful mind, if I can say that. A meditative practice is all about giving your attention not to the imagery, not to your desires, not to just like, oh yeah, I want that, attitude, just to take you to a more self-aware level where when you acknowledge your existence, you are your own greatest ability. And so it's very important to know that your permission is at times your decision to get involved. So there have been times where I actually had a moment in my life where life suddenly got so harsh that I wondered why it was even here. It's as if sometimes I find, and of course this is simply something playful I'm saying about my experience. It's nothing to take too seriously, but there have been times in life where I've noticed that I've had a certain, it's as if I've been arrogant enough in life, and I'm like, oh, I know it, I got the meaning. Suddenly, as if some force, some wind would come and hit me and tell me, no, you have not, because you're not recognizing the hand of the wind. And so I kept going through this, and then eventually I recognized if you ignore others, it's not as bad as when you ignore yourself. Because when you ignore others, you can walk away from them. But you can't ignore yourself, And ignoring yourself means that you as a human being must never be in a situation where you think you cannot handle this system. First of all, this system is naturally being handled. Second of all, you are aware of yourself beyond conception. So don't think that, for example, how you're maintaining yourself here is just based on your physical aspects. The physical aspects of you is simply how this holographic projection of what you find to be your world is kept, and it's a plane of existence. And I use the pilot of consciousness analogy because you will see that the next sense of fluctuations in our consciousness would be our own conscious ability to suddenly burst into our unknown and come back. So it's as if it's like suddenly we've come to this part of the pool, and we've tapped on this wall, and so now we're swimming back to tap on the other wall and come back. Do you realize this? It's as if that in our multidimensionality, there's no human communication that is wrong. There should not be, in a sense, a judgment system. And this is very hard for me to explain because we need to really analyze our social structures before I can really implement a very workable idea in this regard. But I just want to simply hint about this idea that we must recognize that humanity, it's not like that we're just human beings, we are human beings that are changing into whatever the human beings evolving to, just as there's evolution, as many people agree. Right? So as we are evolving, it's very important to see that we give permission. Some people will get insane. It's just like the species, It's like that moment where all the monkeys were, just walking like monkeys, and suddenly one of them chose to stand, and all the other monkeys were like, what did he just do? Do you know what I mean? And they were like, this guy's insane. He's gonna fall down. And eventually that monkey stood up, and so perhaps he might have, seen more. His vision might have expanded. And that's a very crazy idea. The fact that the monkey stood up was the fact that as a being it chose to have more vision, So anyways, simply man is a changing thing, and regardless of how much you feel like you're punishing someone, you're like, why am I? Because, we're both temporal beings, and at the same time, that being is just how, for example, it's just how a human being is and is changing, So it's as if, it's very crazy, guys, because we need more compassion in the system, So the system no longer needs heroes, but needs beings who are realizing they are the system. You know what I mean? A hero is nice. For example, a character in the story could be the coolest character, but afterwards you're like, who's the storyteller? Gosh. And that's when life gets serious, because that's when you begin confronting the temporal nature and the concept of death. Many people are not comfortable with the concept of death, and I'm telling you, get immediately comfortable with it. The more younger you are and you are aware of this, the better you are, the healthier your mind will stay, Imagine if that death is not real for you, you will suddenly see your head is in the clouds, and when you come back, it's as if illusion had too much of a loud voice, and that is not required. Your story is your significance in how much you are, in a sense, looking at what you are. And I'm telling you, if you think that you know yourself and you have some imagery for it, you still don't know yourself. It is beyond image. It is that moment where suddenly, the curtains open and the light that comes through the windows says, direct experience, It's like a direct experience thing. It's a direct, knowing the fact that no one can teach you of the door that you can open within yourself. And when you open this door, it has a very majestic opening. It's a feeling of reunion. It's a feeling that you suddenly are in a plane of awareness where the actuality of your harmony is present, So there are times that I can choose to change the intensity of my thought. So I can suddenly think of, let's say, any movie scene. Let's say you put an image of like some horror scene, right? I can tune into that to the point that in the subtler abstracts of my awareness to my presence, I become that experience. So you realize as a self-aware being, one of the immediate things I find happens is that your awareness finds itself not limited to the bodies of its consideration. It's as if that moment you realize, oh God, this jacket is in my skin. You know what I mean? It's like very ridiculous idea, why did I think my jacket's my skin when I always knew my skin felt, like this, It's like, it's that metaphor that was really not a metaphor, but just an infinite glance. The story of the man who left this world is that being who recognized there was no character. It was that being who realized there was no search, there was no... and it's kind of funny how I would say it, but it's like, think of it this way, that it's as if everything you think you know right now, visualize you knowing all the opposite of it, and also visualize you no longer needing to know it because you know everything. It's as if you reach a point where it's not a physical thing, but it's just like your awareness to existence is comfortable with an experience of all conception. And I don't know if everyone's the same. Of course, this is Mr. Within's experience, but I find that in the essence of who you are, in your confrontation of that inner flame, from the ashes, a very bright phoenix has always stepped out. We are beyond our own conception because we are the conceivers of it. Similar to how we find, oh, I am a god because I can say the word her, like peace or something, And what I mean by that is that we are so convinced that our language is the pillars of our certainty that the minute we see it's hollow, we have the fear of crumbling down. We get anxiety attacks and panic attacks, which are, I don't know what they are. They're just your own interpretation of some aspect of your changing system, But I would really say that it's guys, it is very important that you recognize, if you want to tap into any natural sense of system, or if you're anyone who's interested in spiritual ideas, but kind of feels like, gosh, maybe I'm in the ideas part too much, I want to simply tell you, in your own self-exploration, so it's nothing anyone else is doing, it's something you're doing for yourself. Let's say you sit down in the park and you sit on the grass and you just breathe as if your breathing was aligned with the flow of the ocean, and suddenly your body, there was a wave of calm with each breath, and you were just very peacefully present. And suddenly, let's say if you were there and you went into your own experience, you will see the vastness of your being. You will simply see that the fact that you have been able to create a limited sense of yourself has always given you the knowing that it's like the person who created it was the creator, It's as if you always know that the limitation is just one aspect of your experience, but the whole picture is of a totally different intelligence, So what that means is right now, I kind of find that human consciousness is like the nail thinking that it knows itself and it thinks it's everything. But suddenly it's recognizing, oh God, I'm connected to a palm and I'm connected to, like, let's say, shoulders of, great, strength or something. I don't know. And it's one of those things that you kind of see that the intelligence of your whole body is. And so it's that moment where the surgeon is in the process, and as he's in the process of conducting surgery, he is seeing, he has trust in the human biology. It's as if the heart will continue to beat as long as there's the balance, as long as there's the proper adjustments, and as long as there's accuracy. It's very important to see that you are giving yourself permission into how able the imagery of your reality is. And what that means is that there was a point in my life where I was really dull. And I had such good reason to be when I look back at it now, because I did not take initiative to look at myself. Many people look at others and they forget to look at yourself. Oh my God. And when I say look at yourself, it's not like looking at yourself in the mirror and being like, oh, that's my face. Oh, you know, it's you looking at your being. You looking at the deepest ideas, the deepest depths of what mind means for you, what your conception means to you, what your existence means to you. It's as if in one night your curiosity has opened many skies, where it's just like your simple observance of a thought becomes a philosophy of its own. You know, it's very important to see that your mind is not a relationship of form. It is an awareness of form, and that awareness is of a transcendent sense. And that is why there have been many people who have come and said there's transcendental meditation. And what that really means is like, hey buddy, we're calling it transcendental, but that word doesn't mean anything. It's just a way of you experiencing your life that is just beyond the sense that we can conceive it now. It's a sense of being aware of your existence to a point that is as if there can be no disease, no infection. It's as if the clarity of your absolute sense of being suddenly becomes that point where everything leaves. There was a moment in my life, and this was actually recent, where I just had this experience where I cannot even say a single thing about it. But after the experience, it's as if every sickness, every sense or idea I had of my lack of health or idea of my shape faded. You know, it's as if I felt like this wave, as if like this awareness I had suddenly got rid of everything that was hazy. And so there was a clarity that was silent and still through an awareness of all noise and movement. You know, it was a fascinating experience, you know. It's as if my external and internal had both just, in a sense, been in a moment of absolute nothing, because I had an awareness of all of it, you know, beyond the form. So as that happened, it's as if health was just, it's as if my whole life I thought, dear God, I have to go find things. And with that moment, it's as if everything was finding me, in a sense that suddenly I felt the way I was breathing air was different. It's as if my awareness to what I thought air was, and I realized, no. Our concepts are great platforms for many, how do I say, births of spiritual imagery. You will suddenly see that there are many great presences present where we are now. It's like I walk and I simply, you know, it's like that moment where you're walking, you're going to Niagara Falls and you haven't even gotten to the falls, but you just stop for a moment and you're just hearing the sound, you know, and the sound is so vast. And so that sound, which is like beyond any animal, you know, the intensity of any animal, it just gets you in of the magnitude of that natural phenomena. And then when you go see it, you're like, wow, the sound didn't lie. And once we become observant of the self, there's nothing for anyone else to say, but you know that you're an advanced communicator, because the communication has always been advanced. Give yourself the permission to explore your life in greater ways. That's it. In other words, like for example, a person who's depressed is not giving himself that permission. A person who's in fear, in struggle, a person who looks at life and he doesn't have energy, he's tired, bored. No. It's very important for you to be authentic and to be serious with what you are. And whether that means some random person, you know, with an empty face telling you to go see yourself in the mirror or whatever. But it's very important that you recognize that the greatest advancements of man It's simply how you as a human being advance towards your own greater understanding. Transcendence now has gone towards gates that are of a transcendental nature. You will begin seeing that the greatest artworks of man will suddenly reach a peak where the next greatest work of art will be experienced. And so that's when virtual reality will attempt to come in, but we will be too pulled in by the natural allowance that is our flow of perception. So you will suddenly become aware that your perception is not your perception, but is present within a sense of being that is multi-present. So it's like that's the point where Mr.Within can begin talking about a sense of multiverses. You know, the fact that this universe is not here, but we can't go to that yet. You know, we first need to be aware of the present moment and realize each person, for example, hearing my talk right now, requires to give himself that moment to just realize his real I. And through that, there is no demise. And so that is when eternity becomes real for you, not because of how much of a fantasy it was, not just because of how the pictures of heaven looked like, you know, in the gallery, because your experience is so excited, so longing for that sense of love to expand into that moment of being, that you realize you want to go experience it beyond all your imagery. And so this has been present in many traditions where there have been gurus, for example, in ancient India, where you would see that it's as if the student, before he knew the guy was his guru, he suddenly was hit by a shock. It's as if it was an overwhelming moment where the guru was not your best friend. He was emissary of chaos. He was a messenger of chaos who had come to break your order world, to show you that is when you are aware that through the crevice of what is broken, you know, for example, if you are blocked in a cave, in that crevice that we open and get out of that cave, you begin seeing that the light was always there. Our sense of ability, greater ability was always there. It was only our awareness that was choosing to see an individual that was not collective, and that is impossible. So you know what's impossible? Something impossible. That's it. And so that is when the words silence themselves. We must have an ability in how we utilize terminology to show how words are empty and how words silence themselves. And so my communication, I find, has been doing that. So my friends really see that the story of the man who left this world behind was a human being who looked at life and saw nothing there, but then realized that everything is present. And so you see, it's that moment where you have gone to the end of your cave to see that there was never a need to ever have taken your first step. It's as if that moment you reach within your realization where you suddenly, it's as if your mind is rewinding back to that moment before you took that step, and you are a direct experience. It's that moment where you were the whole universe looking at yourself before you were born. It's that moment where eternity and infinity walked by you to show you that you are beyond even the lights that carry you. It's very important to see that right now is a point to talk about your internal experiences, but in authentic ways and in how nature wants you to communicate it, you know. You can choose to create relationships where you think that, oh, you know, I'm talking to something, or I'm talking to this thing, and there's these things, and you can choose to have a very juicy story, but juicy stories give you an unnecessary hunger for something that you use very unnecessary. So you really need to realize that you are wise in the sense that you know that at the roots of wisdom could never be seen. You are wise in knowing that you are the allowance of all things that pass. And so the passages that you have read, whether they're in science textbooks or in holy textbooks or in holy books, it's very important to see that they have all been passages. They have all been ways of you to move beyond the reality that you're confronting. and to see a reality that is greater. And so you need to realize that it's as if that moment where your analysis is not really coming on that guy being a good or bad person, but how much you are aware of everything. Trust me. Because you will see that if you get angry at someone afterwards, you'd be like, God, I don't know everything. Why did I have reason to get angry? And so you would see that your mind is working differently, Some things will appear absurd to you, but appearances change the minute you remember yourself. And so the greatest sense of remembrance comes for you through sincerity, and that's very important to keep in mind. And you sometimes find that worlds will collide through simply reading certain words. And as communication implies more than a communicator, the story has melted away, similar to how that candle that was in sunlight no longer needed the light. And so you will simply see that space and time too are an opening to a knowing beyond space and time. And remember that the mystic's eyes are always lovers of value. And so it is a compassionate being who will be given the compass to a moment where all knowing never needs to be made. And so your smile will be a smile that is